Tonight on Connecticut's news station, the family of Mubarak Sulaman speaking out for the first time since Trooper Brian North was acquitted on all charges connected to that death. What they're saying about the verdict.
Plus, Michelle Tronis back in court, this time for a charge from something that allegedly happened during her trial. We'll explain.
And Connecticut is one of dozens of states, plus the DOJ, suing tech giant Apple, while local officials say the company is abusing its power.
Now at 6, this is Fox 61, Connecticut's news station.
And good evening. Thanks for joining us for the Fox 61 News at 6. I'm Bridget Bjorlo.
And I'm Brent Harden. For the first time since the grueling trial began, the family of slain suspect Mubarak Sulaman took to the microphones to reiterate their disappointment in the verdict, but also to chart a path forward. And
Trooper Brian North was acquitted on all charges connected to that shooting death. Fox 61's Matt Caron has reaction from the family.
4 years later, and you can still see the pain on their faces. You can hear it in their voices. The family of Mubarak Sulaman sharing their raw emotions with us, but also sharing their ideas on how to hold law enforcement accountable in the future.
It's been a long 4 years.
From the original pain of loss.
We're overwhelmed, we're distraught.
To the courtroom trauma of reliving a nightmare.
That was an intense day.
To the pervasive feeling that justice is forever out of reach.
It's hard, very stressful.
The family of 19-year-old Mubarak Sulaman spoke for the first time since 33-year-old Connecticut State Police Trooper Brian North was acquitted of all charges connected to his killing. What would they say to him?
No comment.
And while the criminal trial is over, a civil lawsuit will now move forward as a final plea for accountability.
We're going to move on. We have another step to take.
It was January of 2020 when Sulaman, in the midst of a mental health episode, led police on a chase in a stolen car down I-95, crashing in West Haven.
Police officers obviously do not have the training to deal with those who suffer with mental illness.
Troopers surrounded the vehicle, and less than a minute later, Trooper North fired 7 shots. North claimed he thought Sulaman lunged at officers with a knife.
He stepped out of that car, and within 36 seconds, he shot 7 gunshots to my brother, who was seated in a car with the windows up. That should say it all.
The Office of the Inspector General said officers failed to de-escalate the situation and deemed the use of deadly force unjustified, saying no officers were in danger because Sulaman was contained in the car.
The real justice would be my brother being here today and not having been killed so ruthlessly the way he was by Brian North.
Criminal defense attorney Mark Aarons told Fox 61 the issue of qualified immunity for police officers should be scrutinized.
Yes, but that's something that has to be taken up on a national basis.
And he said prosecuting law enforcement shouldn't be as rare as it is.
First time ever that any state trooper has been prosecuted in the state of Connecticut. And it's the first time in 17 or 18 years that any law enforcement officer, state or municipal, has been prosecuted for shooting someone. So it almost never happens.
Attorney Aarons told me he hasn't spoken with any of the jurors. But as this civil suit moves forward, it should be easier because the burden of proof would move from beyond a reasonable doubt to a preponderance of the evidence. He told me that their legal team is willing to accept a settlement offer to avoid relitigating the case and re-traumatizing the family. Reporting in Bridgeport, Matt Caron, Fox 61, Connecticut's news station.
All right, Matt, thank you. New tonight, a 26-year-old man is dead after being shot outside a Waterbury courthouse this morning. Police say the man was shot outside the Grand Street building after attending court proceedings earlier in the day. He was taken to the hospital where he later died. Suspect left the scene before police arrived. Anyone with information should call Waterbury Police.
And for the first time since she was found guilty in all 6 charges against her, Michelle Tronis appeared in Stamford Superior Court, but this time for another matter.
This time for a misdemeanor charge from something that she allegedly did during her trial.
Fox 61's Julie LeBlanc has a breakdown now from Stamford.
Nearly 3 weeks ago, Michelle Tronis faced her fate at this courthouse. Now she's back in the same place, but on a different charge.
Good morning, Your Honor.
Michelle Tronis once again in a Stamford courtroom.
It's got a separate docket number.
Smiling to her family and friends in the gallery and blowing them kisses.
Would you like an opportunity to pre-trial the matter with me?
Unlike her recent 7-week trial, this proceeding ended in a matter of minutes, with a new attorney and a Spanish interpreter by her side.
I have provided a physical copy of that report to counsel.
That report is the one in question. It's a sealed custody document involving the divorce between Jennifer Farber-Dulos and Fotis Dulos. Tronis faces a contempt charge connected to this moment caught on camera during her recent trial.
Ms. Tronis appears to have a text from a sealed report on her monitor in a very high, big font.
It's alleged Tronis purposefully displayed the sealed document on her laptop during testimony for the public to see. One of Jennifer's close friends brought it to the attention of prosecutors.
Why don't we come back to court on May 15th?
The judge set Tronis' bond for the misdemeanor charge at $100, but she's still being held at the York Correctional Institution on a $6 million bond after a jury convicted her on all 6 charges of conspiracy to commit murder, hindering prosecution, and tampering with evidence, all in connection to Jennifer Farber-Dulos' death.
We stand here in support of Michelle Tronis.
Michelle's mother speaking with reporters outside of court.
She's a devoted mother, a sensible individual, and she will never harm any other human being, and much less a mother like her.
A mother this family continues to defend.
We will continue to support Michelle until we pursue her freedom.
Now, Tronis' new attorney declined to comment outside of court today. Now, she is expected to be back at this courthouse on May 31st for her sentencing on the 6 other charges, but she'll also be back before that in April for motions filed by her other attorney for an acquittal and a new trial. We are in Stamford. Julia LeBlanc, Fox 61, Connecticut's news station.
Julia, thank you. Hartford police are investigating an ATM burglary tonight. Police say it happened at the Gulf gas station on Franklin Avenue around 3:30 this morning. They say it appears a vehicle used a chain with a hook to force open the locked door. The ATM inside the gas station was stolen. No word on how many people were involved. The investigation is ongoing.
A reward is now being offered for information about 3 pit bulls that were abandoned in Woodbridge. Animal advocate group Desmond's Army will now be paying $3,000 to anyone who can explain who left these 3 female dogs earlier in the week right near Woodfield Road. The dogs were extremely underweight and suffered from open sores. Anyone with any information is asked to call the Woodbridge Animal Control.
Meriden officials are reminding residents that it is illegal to park in front of a fire hydrant after crews responded to a fire to find a minivan blocking a hydrant. This happening at a home on Randolph Avenue last night. Crews say they had to break the minivan's windows to be able to access the hydrant. No one was injured, but 7 people were displaced. Police believe the fire was started by a pillow that was on top of an electric baseboard.
Well, it was a sunny yet chilly day in Connecticut. It almost caught me off guard because it looked so nice. Yes. And then I'm like, ooh, it's cold.
Colder than it looked out the window, that's true. Chief Meteorologist Rachel Frank joining us now. Rach, what have we got coming up?
I agree. It sure was deceiving out there today. And we're in for another cold night ahead. Temperatures will be tumbling into the 20s. We could even see some teens for some of our cooler spots and outlying areas. But here's the good news. Less wind tomorrow, and that will go a long way to making it feel more comfortable. But I really wanted to let you know about rain on Saturday, because not only is Saturday looking like a washout, but we could see some potential flooding issues too. Taking a look at the radar close to home, we've got nothing going on, which is nice to see. And again, tomorrow will be dry as well. And this is the storm that we're tracking coming out of the Gulf of Mexico, and it'll be moving almost directly overhead, which is why we're anticipating so much rain, about 1 to 3 inches. Temperatures right now are in the 30s, near 40 for the Connecticut shoreline, and we've got winds gusting up around 30, 35 miles per hour. That's making it feel like the 20s for most of the state. So if you're heading out tonight to maybe walk the dog, again, remember, it's deceiving out there. You need a few extra layers. Overnight lows will be back in the 20s. Again, some teens for our cooler spots. Lots of sunshine, less wind, highs in the mid-40s, increasing clouds later tomorrow night. And then we've got that rain by the time you wake up on Saturday morning. We'll take a full look at the timing and the improvement for Sunday coming up.
All right, Rachel, thank you so much. In a bold move, the Justice Department has sued a tech giant Apple, accusing the company of maintaining a smartphone monopoly. The landmark lawsuit was filed today in federal court in New Jersey, and now Connecticut is one of 15 other states joining that lawsuit. Here's why leaders say it's a step toward reining in big tech.
Connecticut joining the Department of Justice and more than a dozen other states to take on one of the most powerful companies in the world in a courtroom showdown that could decide the future of big tech.
The state of Connecticut has sued Apple Inc. for abusing its monopoly power to hurt competitors, to restrict choice for consumers, and ultimately to raise prices on consumers.
In a press conference Thursday, State Attorney General William Tong sided with the DOJ, saying Apple broke antitrust law by preventing competitors like Samsung from developing apps and services used on the iPhone, even if it meant savings for the consumer.
There's no denying how dominant these devices and the iOS ecosystem, which Apple developed and owns and dominates, is important to us.
The lawsuit says raising prices while placing restrictions on other companies allowed Apple to monopolize the smartphone market and generate record profits.
If you want the latest and greatest phone, $1,500, $1,600. It's outrageous, honestly. It's so expensive for Connecticut families to have to think about that.
In just the last fiscal year, the DOJ says Apple recorded net revenues of $383 billion and a net income of $97 billion, more than any other Fortune 500 company.
They make more money than anybody else.
Which is why these leaders say a check on big tech is needed to give more options to smartphone users and make sure the rules of the marketplace are followed.
This really comes down to choice, competition, and price. And I think that's why there's this lawsuit today.
And this all comes as there is a growing push by members of Congress to regulate big tech at large, social media companies included. If the DOJ wins this lawsuit, it has not yet ruled out the possibility of breaking up Apple to create more competition.
Well, still to come here on the news at 6, you probably throw away old electronics and don't think twice, but experts say it's actually having a negative impact on our Earth, and we'll explain why.